The crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council buzzed with the harmonious frequencies of a dozen alien species, each translator matrix working overtime to convert the cacophony of languages into comprehensible discourse. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for what many considered a routine matter, the evaluation of yet another primitive species seeking membership in their illustrious confederation. Commander Jack Miller stood at the center of the circular chamber, his human delegation flanked by the towering forms of beings whose civilizations had mastered faster-than-light travel when Earth's ancestors were still discovering fire. The weight of countless eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs pressed down upon him as he prepared to present humanity's case for membership. "Honored Council," Jack began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Humanity comes before you today, not as supplicants, but as equals ready to contribute to the galactic community." A ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the assembled aliens. The Caltharian representative, a being resembling a cross between a praying mantis and a crystalline formation, clicked its mandibles in what Jack had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Equals?" The Caltharian's translated voice echoed through the chamber. "Your species has barely left its home system. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles. Your ships require primitive fusion reactors, and your computational matrices are built from silicon substrates. How exactly do you propose to contribute to civilizations that have transcended such crude limitations?" Jack's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "We may be new to the galactic stage, but humanity has always excelled at finding innovative solutions to complex problems. Our latest breakthrough in nanotechnology." Nanotechnology? The interruption came from Lord Vex of the Vorthan Empire, his massive form rippling with barely contained energy. The Vorthans were among the most feared military powers in the galaxy, their mastery of energy manipulation and force field generation legendary across 1,000 worlds. "You mean those microscopic toys your scientists have been playing with? We've observed your crude attempts at molecular manipulation." Amusing, but hardly revolutionary. The chamber filled with what Jack could only interpret as alien laughter. The Nexuri delegate, whose species had evolved from aquatic beings and now existed in specialized atmospheric suits, gurgled what their translator rendered as mockery. "Our children's educational toys are more sophisticated than your nanobots. Perhaps you should return when you've developed actual technology." Jack felt the familiar fire of determination kindle in his chest. Throughout human history, others had underestimated their species' potential. The same dismissive attitude had been shown to every human innovation, from the wheel to the computer to the first tentative steps into space. Yet here they stood, having not only survived but thrived in a hostile universe. "I understand your skepticism," Jack replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had seen him through countless battles in humanity's expansion to the stars. "But I would remind the Council that every great civilization was once considered primitive by its predecessors. The question isn't where we've come from, but where we're going." The Vorthan Lord's energy field pulsed with colors that Jack's briefing materials had indicated represented disdain. "Pretty words, human, but this Council requires proof of capability, not philosophical platitudes. Your species seeks to join civilizations that have mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. What could you possibly offer that we haven't already perfected? Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe, it's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you." Jack exchanged a glance with his chief scientist, Dr. Lisa Park, who nodded almost imperceptibly. They had anticipated this moment, prepared for it. The decision to reveal humanity's true capabilities had been debated for months in the highest levels of Earth's government. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. "What we offer," Jack said, his voice carrying across the chamber with newfound authority, "is proof that sometimes the most powerful solutions come in the smallest packages. Our nanotechnology isn't just about molecular manipulation. It's about reimagining the very nature of conflict itself." The Caltharian's optical sensors focused on Jack with renewed interest. "Bold claims require bold demonstrations, human. Are you prepared to back up these words with action?" "We are," Jack replied without hesitation. "We propose a demonstration of our capabilities against any force the Council deems appropriate. When you see what human ingenuity can accomplish, you'll understand why we deserve a place among the stars." The chamber fell silent as the Council members communicated through their various forms of technological telepathy. Finally, Lord Vex's energy field shifted to what Jack recognized as anticipation. "Very well, human. The Vorthan Empire accepts your challenge. Our Fourth Fleet will provide an appropriate test of your microscopic toys." The demonstration arena materialized in the vast emptiness of space, between the Council's mobile citadel and the nearest star system. Holographic boundaries marked the combat zone, while observation platforms positioned themselves at safe distances, their shields raised against any stray energy discharges. The assembled delegates had turned what should have been a simple technological demonstration into the equivalent of a galactic sporting event. Commander Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the UE's Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Despite its impressive name, the vessel was dwarfed by the Vorthan fleet, taking positions on the opposite side of the arena. Lord Vex had deployed what he called a modest Force 12 battlecruisers, each one capable of devastating an entire human colony world. "Sensors are tracking massive energy buildups across the Vorthan formation," reported Lieutenant Kane from the tactical station. "Their main weapons are charging." "Sir, those ships are generating more power than our entire fleet combined." Jack nodded grimly. The Vorthan battlecruisers were works of art as much as instruments of war. Their hulls shimmered with energy fields that could deflect or absorb virtually any known weapon, while their primary armaments could punch through planetary shields. By every conventional metric, the coming battle was less a demonstration than an execution. "Dr. Park, status on our special cargo?" Jack asked. The chief scientist looked up from her console, her expression a mixture of excitement and terror. "The nanobots are fully operational. All 50,000 units are synchronized and ready for deployment." "Jack, I have to ask one more time, are you sure about this?" "We've never tested them at this scale before." "The simulations were conclusive," Jack replied, though he shared her concerns. "And frankly, we don't have a choice. If we fail here, humanity will be dismissed as a galactic curiosity. If we succeed, everything changes," Dr. Park finished. "The containment fields are stable. The swarm is ready." Across the arena, the Vorthan fleet had completed its formation. Lord Vex's flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even its escort vessels, pulsed with barely contained energy. The alien commander's voice crackled across the communication channels. "Human vessels, you have entered the arena. By the ancient laws of the Council, this demonstration will continue until one fleet is neutralized or surrenders. Are you prepared to begin?" Jack took a deep breath, his hand steady on the command console. Around him, the bridge crew of the Defiance worked with quiet efficiency, their training and professionalism evident in every movement. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology that surpassed their own by orders of magnitude. In short, they were in exactly the kind of situation where humanity historically performed best. "All ships, this is Commander Miller," Jack broadcast to the small human fleet. "Remember, we're not here to match their firepower. We're here to prove that there's more than one way to win a battle. Trust in your training, trust in your equipment, and trust in each other. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity can do." The response came back across multiple channels, voices filled with the same determination that had carried their species from caves to the stars. "Aye, sir, ready to make history." On the observation platforms, the alien delegates leaned forward with anticipation. The Nexari representative had activated what appeared to be a recording device, clearly expecting to document humanity's swift defeat. The Caltharians' optical sensors were focused intently on the tactical displays, calculating the probable duration of the coming slaughter. "The humans' ships are primitive," the Caltharian observed to its neighbors. "Chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, basic energy shields. I estimate their fleet will be disabled within the first exchange of fire." The Nexari's aquatic form rippled with amusement. "Perhaps we should establish a pool on exactly how long they'll last. I say less than 1 minute from the first shot." Only the ancient Valdorian observer, a being so old its species had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations, remained silent. Its multifaceted eyes studied the human formation with something that might have been curiosity or perhaps recognition. "All vessels weapons free," Lord Vex commanded. "Show these humans the price of arrogance." The Vorthan fleet erupted in coordinated violence. Energy beams lanced across the void, each one carrying enough destructive force to vaporize a small asteroid. The light show was spectacular, a demonstration of raw power that had brought entire star systems to their knees. But Jack was already moving, his fleet scattering in patterns that seemed random, but had been carefully calculated. "Deploy the swarm," he ordered. "All units, execute pattern Alpha." From the underbelly of each human ship, small objects began to emerge, thousands upon thousands of them, each no larger than a grain of sand. To the watching aliens, they appeared to be nothing more than debris, perhaps fragments of hull plating shaken loose by the Vorthan bombardment. The nanobots spread out in a cloud that was invisible to most sensors, their advanced stealth capabilities rendering them nearly undetectable. As the Vorthan energy beams continued to slice through space, the microscopic swarm began its approach, moving with purpose and coordination that would have been impossible for any conventional weapon. "Is that it?" Lord Vex's voice carried a note of genuine disappointment. "This is humanity's great innovation? Releasing debris into space?" But Dr. Park was watching her monitors with growing excitement. "Swarm is approaching the target zone. First contact in 30 seconds. The Vorthan energy barrage intensified as Lord Vex's fleet pressed their advantage. Crimson beams of concentrated plasma carved through the void, each shot capable of melting through the armor of any conventional warship. The human vessels danced between the attacks with desperate grace, their inferior speed and maneuverability barely keeping them ahead of the devastating fire. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Lieutenant Kane reported from the tactical station. "Shield generators are overloading." Commander Jack Miller gripped his command chair as the U.S. Defiance shuddered under another near miss. The Vorthan weapons were more powerful than their intelligence estimates had suggested, and his fleet was taking a beating. But the plan was working. The aliens were so focused on their overwhelming firepower that they hadn't noticed the true threat approaching there. "Formation. Dr. Park, time to contact?" Jack called out over the sounds of alarms and emergency systems. 10 seconds. She replied, her eyes fixed on the nanobots' targeting display. "The swarm is maintaining perfect formation. They're invisible to their sensors." On the observation platforms, the alien delegates watched the unfolding battle with a mixture of satisfaction and boredom. The outcome was exactly what they had predicted. The primitive humans were being systematically destroyed by superior technology. The Nexari representative's recording device captured each moment of the human ship's desperate evasion attempts. "Perhaps we should end this demonstration," the Caltharian suggested. "The humans have shown commendable courage, but this is becoming a massacre." "No," Lord Vex's voice boomed across the communication channels. "They asked for this demonstration. Let them learn the price of challenging the Vorthan Empire." The massive alien battlecruisers advanced in perfect formation, their energy shields shimmering with power. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, protected by force fields that could deflect meteor impacts and armed with weapons that could crack planetary crusts. They were, by every measure, invincible. The first nanobots made contact with the lead Vorthan vessel. To the naked eye, nothing happened. The microscopic robots were far too small to be seen, and their initial actions were subtle beyond detection. They simply found their way through the gaps in the energy shields, gaps that existed at the molecular level, spaces between the force field matrices that were large enough for something the size of a virus to pass through. "Contact confirmed," Dr. Park announced, her voice tight with excitement. "The swarm has penetrated their defenses. Beginning Phase 2. The nanobots spread across the hull of the Vorthan battlecruiser like an invisible infection. Each robot was a marvel of human engineering, packed with more computing power than entire Earth cities had possessed just centuries before. They were equipped with specialized tools for molecular manipulation, powered by miniature fusion reactors that could operate for years without refueling. Their first task was reconnaissance. The nanobots mapped the ship's hull composition, identifying the materials and structural weaknesses. They found the points where armor plating connected to the underlying framework, located the conduits that carried power and data throughout the vessel, and began to understand the alien technology from the inside out. Energy readings are spiking across the Vorthan fleet, Lieutenant Kane reported. They're charging their main weapons for a final bombardment. Jack nodded grimly. The Vorthans were preparing to end the demonstration with overwhelming force. Lord Vex's flagship was building up energy that would be sufficient to destroy the entire human fleet in a single coordinated strike. Time to contact on the remaining vessels? Jack asked. 30 seconds for the nearest ships, 2 minutes for the flagship, Dr. Park replied. But Jack, if they fire before we can. They won't, Jack interrupted, his voice carrying absolute confidence. Watch the lead battlecruiser. The Vorthan vessel that had been struck first was showing no outward signs of damage. Its energy shields remained at full strength. Its weapons continued to fire, and its hull appeared intact. But deep within its structure, billions of nanobots were working with relentless efficiency. They had identified the ship's primary weakness, the connection points between the energy conduits and the shield generators. Working in perfect coordination, the nanobots began to systematically dismantle the molecular bonds that held these crucial components together. It was surgery performed at the atomic level, invisible to any sensor system the Vorthans possessed. What are those humans doing? The Nexari delegate asked, its aquatic form rippling with confusion. Their ships are barely fighting back. The ancient Valdorian observer leaned forward, its multiple eyes focusing intently on the tactical displays. Something in the energy readings had caught its attention, subtle fluctuations that suggested system failures beginning deep within the Vorthan vessels. Perhaps, the Valdorian said in its ancient creaking voice, we should observe more carefully. The first sign of trouble came when the lead Vorthan battlecruiser's energy shields flickered. It was barely noticeable, a momentary dimming that lasted less than a second. But Dr. Park saw it on her instruments, and her face split into a fierce grin. Phase 2 complete on the lead vessel, she announced. Beginning Phase 3. The nanobots had finished their reconnaissance and sabotage of the shield systems. Now they turned their attention to the ship's weapons array. The Vorthan energy cannons were marvels of engineering, but they relied on a complex network of focusing crystals and power conduits that were vulnerable to molecular-level interference, working with the precision of a surgeon and the persistence of a virus. The nanobots began to introduce microscopic flaws into the weapon systems. They altered the crystalline structure of the focusing elements, created microscopic gaps in the power conduits, and systematically weakened every component they could reach. Lord Vex's voice crackled across the communication channels, filled with supreme confidence. Human vessels, you have fought bravely but futilely. Prepare to witness the true power of the Vorthan Empire. The alien fleet's weapons reached full charge, energy readings climbing to levels that made the human instruments struggle to display accurate measurements. The combined firepower of 12 battlecruisers was about to be unleashed in a coordinated strike that would vaporize the human fleet in seconds. All vessels brace for impact, Jack ordered, but his voice carried no fear. He was watching Dr. Park's instruments, seeing the subtle changes in the Vorthan energy signatures that indicated the nanobots were reaching critical mass. The Vorthan fleet fired. The moment Lord Vex's fleet discharged their weapons, the true horror of humanity's nanobots revealed itself. The lead Vorthan battlecruiser's main cannon, charged with enough energy to level a city, exploded in a cascade of feedback that rippled through the ship's entire power grid. The carefully sabotaged focusing crystals shattered under the strain, sending waves of uncontrolled energy throughout the vessel's systems. Impossible. Lord Vex's voice cracked across the communication channels as his sensors registered the catastrophic failure. No weapon could have penetrated our shields, but the destruction was only beginning. The nanobots had spent their time well, and their work was designed to create maximum chaos at the most critical moment. As the Vorthan weapons fired, the microscopic saboteurs triggered a cascade of system failures that turned the aliens' own power against them. The lead battlecruiser's energy shields collapsed as the nanobots severed the connections between the generators and the projection arrays. Without their protective barriers, The ship's hull was exposed to the very weapons fire it had been directing at the human fleet. Secondary explosions bloomed across the vessel's surface as overloaded systems vented their energy in spectacular fashion. "Dr. Park, status of the swarm?" Commander Jack Miller called out, his voice steady despite the incredible spectacle unfolding before them. "Nanobots have achieved full penetration of 8 vessels," she reported, her instruments tracking the microscopic army with growing excitement. "They're replicating using the ship's own materials. Current swarm count is approaching 1 million units. That was the nanobots' most terrifying capability, their ability to reproduce using available materials. Each robot carried the blueprints and manufacturing capability to create more of itself, turning the very ships they invaded into factories for their own destruction. The Vorthan vessels, with their advanced materials and sophisticated systems, were providing the perfect resources for exponential growth. On the observation platforms, the alien delegates watched in growing horror as the seemingly invincible Vorthan fleet began to tear itself apart. The Nexari representative's recording device captured every moment of the unfolding catastrophe, while the Caltharians' optical sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. "This is not possible," the Caltharian's translated voice carried notes of panic. "The Vorthan shields are impenetrable. Their weapons are indestructible. How can they be failing?" The ancient Valdorian observer leaned back in its contemplation. Alcove, its multiple eyes reflecting what might have been admiration. "Perhaps," it said in its creaking voice, "we have underestimated the potential of thinking small." The second Vorthan battlecruiser succumbed to the nanobots' assault as its main reactor began to overload. The microscopic invaders had identified the reactor's cooling systems as a critical vulnerability, systematically dismantling the heat exchangers and flow regulators. As the reactor temperature climbed beyond safe parameters, automated systems began shutting down weapon arrays and shield generators in a desperate attempt to reduce power consumption. "Lord Vex, we need to retreat." One of his subordinates' voices crackled across the communication channels. "Our ships are being destroyed by an unknown weapon." "There is no unknown weapon," Lord Vex roared back, his energy field pulsing with colors that indicated rage and disbelief. "It's impossible for anything to penetrate our defenses without being detected." But impossibility was becoming reality as the nanobots spread throughout the Vorthan fleet. The microscopic robots had evolved beyond their original programming, adapting to each new ship they encountered and learning from their previous successes. They were no longer just following pre-programmed instructions. They were thinking, learning, and improvising. The third battlecruiser lost its main engines as the nanobots severed the connections between the power plant and the propulsion systems. The massive vessel began to drift helplessly, its crew frantically trying to understand what was happening to their ship. Every diagnostic showed normal readings. Every sensor indicated that their systems were functioning properly, yet their ship was falling apart around them. "Jack, the nanobots are requesting permission to initiate Phase 4, Dr. Park reported, her voice filled with awe. "They want to begin total conversion of the enemy vessels." Phase 4 was the nanobots' final protocol, the one that had been considered too dangerous for anything but the most extreme circumstances. Instead of merely disabling the enemy ships, the microscopic army would begin converting them entirely, breaking down their hulls, systems, and weapons to create more nanobots. It was the ultimate expression of humanity's principle that any technology could be turned against its creators. "Permission granted," Jack said without hesitation. "Show them what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity." The transformation began immediately. The fourth Vorthan battlecruiser started to dissolve from the inside out, its hull plating falling away in precisely calculated sections as the nanobots converted the raw materials into more of themselves. The process was eerily beautiful, like watching a flower bloom in reverse, as the mighty warship was consumed by an enemy too small to see. Lord Vex's flagship was the last to fall, its massive size and advanced systems providing only a temporary reprieve. The nanobots had learned from their assault on the smaller vessels, and they attacked the dreadnought with tactical precision that would have impressed human military strategists. They targeted the ship's communication arrays first, isolating Lord Vex from his remaining fleet, then moved on to the weapon systems and shields. "This cannot be happening," Lord Vex's voice was barely a whisper now, filled with the horror of absolute defeat. "We are the Vorthan Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We cannot be defeated by microscopic toys." But the nanobots cared nothing for the aliens' pride or their military history. They were humanity's answer to the galaxy's dismissal. A weapon born from the same ingenuity that had carried their species from primitive caves to the stars. Each robot was a testament to human creativity, determination, and the willingness to think beyond conventional limitations. The flagships. Energy shields failed in a spectacular cascade of light as the nanobots completed their work. The mighty dreadnought, pride of the Vorthan fleet, began to break apart as its own systems turned against it. The microscopic army had achieved total victory, demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful weapons came in the smallest packages. As the last of the Vorthan vessels succumbed to the nanobots' assault, the arena fell silent except for the sound of metal breaking apart and energy systems discharging into space. The demonstration was over, but its implications were only beginning to be understood. The silence that followed the destruction of the Vorthan fleet was profound. In the space where 12 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had once dominated the arena, only debris remained, and even that was being systematically consumed by the ever-growing swarm of nanobots. The microscopic army had achieved something that no conventional weapon in the galaxy had ever accomplished: the complete annihilation of a Vorthan battle group. Commander Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching the tactical display as the last traces of the enemy fleet disappeared into the nanobots' expanding cloud. His crew worked in stunned silence, their instruments tracking the microscopic army as it continued to grow and adapt. The demonstration had exceeded even their most optimistic projections. "Dr. Park, recall the swarm," Jack ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "We've made our point." The chief scientist's fingers flew across her console, sending the shutdown commands to the nanobots through their quantum communication network. The microscopic army responded immediately, their programmed loyalty to humanity overriding their destructive capabilities. Within minutes, the expanding cloud began to contract, the nanobots returning to their containment units aboard the human vessels. On the observation platforms, the alien delegates sat in stunned silence. The Nexari representative's recording device had captured every moment of the Vorthan fleet's destruction, creating a document that would be studied by military analysts across the galaxy for generations to come. The Caltharians' optical sensors continued to scan the debris field, searching for some explanation that would make sense of what they had witnessed. "Impossible," the Caltharian whispered, its translator struggling to convey the depth of its shock. The Vorthan ships were protected by energy shields rated to withstand stellar bombardment. Their hulls were composed of materials that could resist antimatter detonations. How could they be destroyed by something we cannot even see? The ancient Valdorian observer slowly rose from its contemplation alcove, its multiple eyes reflecting the debris field's distant glow. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons and the wisdom of a species that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "Because," the Valdorian said in its creaking voice, "we measured them by the wrong standard. We looked at their size, their visibility, their resemblance to weapons we understood. We forgot that evolution's greatest achievements often come in the smallest packages: the virus that topples giants, the mutation that changes everything, the idea that transforms reality itself." The communication channels crackled to life as the Galactic Council's senior members requested immediate conference. Representatives from dozens of species, some of whom had not spoken publicly in centuries, demanded to understand what they had witnessed. The human demonstration had not merely shown off a new weapon, it had revealed a fundamental shift in the nature of warfare itself. "Commander Miller," the Valdorian continued, its attention focused on the human fleet, "your species has achieved something remarkable. You have created a weapon that turns an enemy's strength against them, that grows stronger with each victory, that cannot be defended against by conventional means. But more importantly, you have shown us that advancement is not always about becoming bigger, faster, or more powerful. Sometimes it is about becoming smaller, smarter, and more adaptable." Jack nodded respectfully to the ancient alien. understanding that he was receiving praise from a being whose species had been exploring the galaxy, when humanity was still learning to make fire. We learned long ago that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the most adaptable. Our nanobots are just the latest expression of that principle. The formal session of the Galactic Council convened within hours, with representatives from every major species in attendance. The chamber that had earlier rung with mockery and dismissal now buzzed with urgent conversations about the implications of humanity's demonstration. The balance of power that had existed for millennia had been shattered in a matter of minutes. The Caltharian representative spoke first, its voice carrying none of its earlier condescension. The Caltharian Confederation moves to grant humanity immediate full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges thereof. Furthermore, we request formal technology sharing agreements to better understand these nanobots. The motion was seconded by the Nexari delegate, whose aquatic form rippled with what their translator rendered as excitement. The Nexari collective concurs. We have been reminded that wisdom comes in many forms, and that dismissing a species based on the size of their weapons is both foolish and dangerous. One by one, the alien representatives voted to accept humanity into the galactic community. The species that had arrived as supplicants were welcomed as equals, their nanobots having earned them respect that conventional weapons could never have achieved. The vote was unanimous, something that had not occurred in the Council's recorded history. As the session concluded and the delegates began to disperse, Jack found himself approached by Lord Vex. The Vorthan commander's energy field was muted, his earlier arrogance replaced by something that resembled genuine respect. "Commander Miller," Lord Vex said, his translated voice carrying notes of admiration. "I must know, could your nanobots have been stopped? Was there any defense against them?" Jack considered the question carefully before answering. "Every weapon has a counter, Lord Vex. Our nanobots are powerful, but they're not invincible. The key is not to create an unstoppable weapon, but to create one that forces your enemies to think in entirely new ways. Today, we had the advantage of surprise and underestimation. Tomorrow, the galaxy will be preparing for microscopic warfare. And humanity will be preparing for whatever comes next," Lord Vex observed. "Your species has a talent for adaptation that is unsettling. I suspect we have not seen the last of your innovations." As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had always been dismissed as primitive, inferior, or insignificant by those who measured advancement by size and spectacle. Yet time and again, his species had proven that the greatest strength lay not in overwhelming power, but in the ability to find new solutions to old problems. The nanobots had been just one example of human ingenuity, microscopic machines that embodied their creator's talent for turning disadvantages into advantages, for finding opportunity in impossibility. As the galaxy began to grapple with the implications of humanity's demonstration, Jack knew that his species had not merely earned a place among the stars. They had announced their intention to reshape them. The universe had just become a much smaller and much more dangerous place. And at the center of it all, humanity stood ready to prove that sometimes the mightiest force in the galaxy could fit in the palm of your hand.